This morning, I get the privilege of being able to bring the word to you, and I want to talk to you about legacy this morning. I want to talk to you about legacy and becoming who you are destined to be or who you were created to be. And so the first thing that I want to say is that legacy, I would break the word up in let's go see. Legacy, let's go see. Let's go see who you were. If you have a legacy, there should be something that is visible to others that lasts long beyond you being here. There is a lasting legacy. There is an inheritance. There is something that follows. And this is a month to consider what it is that you are taking in and meditating upon the word. And it's a month to be secured in your roots. Roots are strong. And I love, Alan painted a picture in the Sunday school, and I think he taught it this morning, talking about Psalm 1. This is a time that if you read Psalm 1, I think you'll gain a lot out of that scripture. And so we're going to be talking about roots today a little bit, and we're going to be talking about legacy and about becoming who you are called to be, because see, the enemy wants to put in front of you a counterfeit, or cause you to embrace, or cause you to become something that you are not supposed to be, and he wants to impart to you a spirit of insignificance. But you are not insignificant. You are mighty. You are powerful. You are great in God's eyes. God sent his son to die for you because he loved you and he valued you enough. Someone gave and paid a great price for your life. So you are not insignificant. You are not consequential. You are not the result of somebody's mistake. You are God's design. He has you here on purpose. And this is a time to shout, my blessings are on the way. I'm not just existing. I'm not just being here sucking on people's, sucking the life out of people. I am here to be a blessing. I'm here to be a blessing. Let me start in Isaiah 11. Isaiah 11, starting in verse 1. There shall come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord. His delight is in the fear of the Lord, and he shall not judge by the sight of his eyes, nor decide by the hearing of his ears. But with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. And he shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and the breath of his lips he shall slay the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt of his loins, and faithfulness the belt of his waist. Skipping down to verse 9. For the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, who shall stand as a banner to the people, for the Gentiles shall seek him, and his resting place shall be glorious. This here is a psalm, is a prophecy that Isaiah prophesies 200 to 300 years after David. All right, David is born in probably 1040 BC, and Isaiah is 740 to 680 BC. We're counting down towards 0, and then we count back up. And so Isaiah is one of the most renowned prophets of Israel, and one of the most respected prophets of all time. And many times we go to Isaiah and we draw forth scriptures that help us even to this day. So would you agree with me that he is a powerful speaker, orator, and prophet? right? And that when he speaks, we ought to listen to what he has said. So here he says, there shall come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse. Now, what do we know about Jesse? Who is Jesse? David's dad, right? Jesse is a Bethlehemite, who is a shepherd and also a farmer. And he has 8 sons, and one of them is David. Now, Jesse is born of Obed. Obed is born of Boaz. Boaz is the son of Rahab. Rahab is the prostitute of Jericho. I want to talk to you about legacy. I want to talk to you about what lasts. I want to talk to you about God changing some things in your life. I want to talk to you about the petty excuses that you've just made to God about being insignificant and being a nobody and having a messed up life that he can't use. You don't understand how messed up I am. You don't know how broken I am. You don't know where I come from. You don't know my mama, my dada, my grandma. You don't know the history. You don't know how long I've been in suffering. And God says, watch my lineage and look and see what I have done. Because out of the root of Jesse, a guy that you know very little about, I brought forth David, who was the greatest king of all time, who was a giant slayer. And Isaiah spoke of him 300 years later and said, out of the family and the root of Jesse, I will bring forth one who will command the nations and will be raised up as a banner to the nations, and he will be the redeemer of all mankind. So Jesse, being insignificant, had a legacy that is quite significant. And that's what I want to get to you about this morning, is that you have to stop living your life wondering whether your life is significant here. You make investments now that God is going to use later. Nobody knew who Jesse was until there was a genealogy that was written. And look at what God does. So there was a great famine in the land when Naomi and Elimelech were living there, and there was no more bread in the place that was called the house of bread. Right? There was no more, and there was a famine in the land, and so they had to move away, and they moved to Moab, and they took their 2 children with them, who were named, Chiltli and... Let me get it. Ruth. Okay, here it is. Mahlon and Chilion. Or Chilion. One of them says, if you read one of it, it's a CH. And Mahlon literally means sickness. And Chilion means wasting. I want you to come and meet my son, Sickly. He's a catch. You know what I mean? We just love him. He's like the cold that you catch and you can't get away. He's going to be wonderful. He'll be a provider. He'll be so stable. Well, he got married and subsequently died. So did Chilion. He was wasting away. He was pining. He was whining away. And so you see the devastation that has marked this family as they have gone. And maybe your family has gone through devastating seasons too, and you feel like you just want to name things for the devastation that they are. But I want to tell you, God has a redemptive purpose in every single thing that he does. And if you'll stick with him, he'll redeem the things that the enemy intended for evil. He'll turn it around and he'll use it for good in your life. You just got to stay put and let God work in your lives, all right? And so Naomi and Elimelech, they go to Moab. They live there as foreigners. And their 2 sons, they get married within 10 years. They both die. And Elimelech dies. spies. And Naomi says, I've heard that the famine has lifted back home, so I'm going to go back to my people. And her two daughter-in-laws approach her and say, we want to go with you. And she entreats them, look, I am old, and can I bear you any children? Even if I could, would they wait all the way until they are grown to marry you? Stay here in your father's house where you can benefit from, maybe you could be married off to somebody else and you could have significance. And Orpah stays behind, but Ruth says, I will go with you. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God, and I will follow you to the end. And so she could not shake her. She followed her home. I wonder if the way that you walk through tragedy causes others to want to follow you. I wonder if the testimony is still strong in you when everything has been shaken and taken out of your life, and it's shake and bake time, baby, and some things have happened, and it's hot in the kitchen, and people are still saying, your God is my God. I've seen how you handle things, and I want to go with you. And so they go back, and they go back to the land, and Ruth is instructed by Naomi to go and to pick grain from a field that was run by Boaz. And you know the story. Boaz and Naomi, or Boaz and Ruth, they fall in love, and they produce a child named Obed. And Obed produces a child named Jesse, and Jesse produces a child named David. And so God brings forth out of devastation great things. God is not locked into your trauma, your tragedy, what has happened to you. God is able to work things for good and to bring forth a righteous heritage. So, Rahab was in the city of Jericho, and she took in the spies that came to spy out the land to see if the land that God was giving to the Israelites truly was flowing with milk and honey. And so she took in the spies and hid them in their house and made a deal with them. When you guys come and God gives you this land, save me. And they said, we can do this only if you throw out a scarlet rope out your window. Then we will know not to attack your home. And anybody that is in your home, you and your household, anybody that you have gathered there, they shall survive and not be annihilated. In other words, the blood is going to cover you and your household. Now listen, you can't save anybody, but if you are a believer in your household, you can certainly claim the salvation of God comes to me and my household. Jesse was approached by Samuel while Saul was still king, but God had rejected Saul because Saul had disobeyed. And so God said to Samuel, I want you to go down to Bethlehem, to the house of Jesse, and I want you to go there to worship, and when you get there, I'm going to tell you to anoint one of his sons as king over Israel, for I have chosen him. So Samuel goes looking for a nameless, faceless. He doesn't know who he is. And Jesse brings out all of his sons, the good-looking ones, the ones that look like they should belong, the ones that look kingly, and parades them all. And Samuel has to say, no, it's not that one. 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 Do you have any more? Can you understand the gall of this man to be able to say no to all of them? I mean, I would be like, by the fourth one in, I'd be like, I don't even care if this is the one. You're the one. You know what I mean? Like, this is getting down to the wire. I'm getting afraid right here. But God said, no, it's not that one. 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 God knows exactly where you are at and what anointing is upon your life. He knows where to find you. Stop hiding. Come out of hiding. You're safe here with me. Out of Jesse, an unknown person, somebody that we would not normally care about, comes a giant slayer. Out of you could come a giant slayer. if you have labeled yourself to be a nobody, somebody inconsequential in life, you don't know what God is going to do through you. And I probably would say that we would not be interested in who Jesse was had David not slayed Goliath, had David not done what he did. But because he did, because you do what God tells you to do, you give significance to those that have gone before you. What you do affects not only your life, but it affects those who were before you. It affects those who are coming after you. Your actions are important. What you do with your life is important. How you handle yourself is important. How you motivate yourself is important. What you do, what you communicate to those that are around you is important. You have a legacy that you are building. You are changing the world. Maybe you don't have a microphone that you're preaching to millions. Maybe you're just talking to one right now, but you are preaching the word that needs to be preached, and you are putting it in their lives for God to use. You not giving up is important. That's why I challenge you at the beginning of the service to shout, my blessings are on their way. Why? Because you feel like your blessings are on their way? No, probably we feel like, man, my heater went out. And we were like, oh, my Lord, you know, hopefully it's something cheap. And Carrie says, how much do you think it's going to be? And what do we do, guys, when we say, when our wives ask, how much do you think it's going to be? Look up on Google. It's not going to be that much. If it was expensive, it's not going to be that much, right? And then when they get more specific, how much is it going to be? I don't know, maybe 50 to 400. And then the guy comes and it's like more than that, you know? And you're like, oh, man. So why are we saying, shout, my blessings are on their way? It's not because everything is going wonderful. It's not because we are in a perfect place and it's like, yeah, this seems like a great time to just call that on in, you know. It may not look like that. But when you declare that your blessings are on the way, then that other thing of lack causes, it loses its hold on your life. It causes you to have to let go of that. I heard somebody say that you can't hold on to gratitude and anxiety at the same time. So don't be anxious about anything, but pray about everything with thanksgiving. Present your request to God, right? And he knows what you need. I love what we learned last week from Sophia. You know, she said, sometimes my body doesn't cooperate with me and doesn't allow me to come. But believe me, I want to be at church. And I'm like, I'm not calling you for roll call. I'm calling because we care about you and we love seeing you and we love being around you. And she said, you know, I told the Lord, sometimes this old tent doesn't cooperate with me, but don't you ever leave me. Oh, and that put everything in perspective. As long as I have communion with the Lord, as long as I have fellowship with the Lord, as long as I'm drawing life from him, as long as he is nurturing my roots, I can endure any season. But if he stops being my source and I start to look at the way maybe the outward looks or look at the way the world looks or look at what climate is doing or anything like that, when I allow my environment to dictate who I am, then it begins to change me from the outside in. But God causes us to be changed from the inside out. Creation is eagerly awaiting for the revealing of the sons of God. Why? Because they were subjected to futility in hope that when the revealing of the sons of God, that means me and you, when we got our act together and the glory of the Lord started to shine upon us and we started to reverse the curse because we actually did what Adam failed to do, we started to step in and to subdue and conquer and multiply and be fruitful and rule over the world that he has put us in and cause things to fall under his dominion. When we begin to do that, creation begins to rejoice. The trees get happy when you get glory. Do you believe in climate change? I believe in God change. He can do whatever he wants with the climate. Climate change is real. If you go into a room full of happy people being grumpy, you're going to experience a change. There's going to be a environmental change. The environment that you're in can dictate what is happening to you. But the word of the Lord stands firm forever. And so Isaiah here says, out of the root of Jesse is going to come forth one who will rule and will reign. And this is going to be a sign to you. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him. John the Baptist said, God told me that the one on whom I see the Spirit of God descend like a dove and remain, he is the one. Do you realize that words are important? Do you realize that words are the things that have actually formed everything that is around you right now was formed by words? God spoke them into existence. So words are like seeds that are going out and they are creating and generating things in you. And so what you speak forth over your children, what you speak forth over your future, what you speak forth over your own life. And what I'm really getting after is, how is your self-talk? How are you talking to yourself? Are you declaring the good news of God to yourself? Because as you do that, it becomes evident on the outside. I'm not saying everything is perfect, but you start to encourage. David said, I built myself up in my most holy faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. David built himself up in his most holy faith, believing for the things that he was declaring and he was working towards. Legacy, you're more than what you see. In Matthew chapter 1, verse 5 and 6, you have the genealogy, and there you have Salmon begot Boaz by Rahab. Boaz begot Obed by Ruth. Obed begot Jesse, and Jesse begot David the king. And the king begot Solomon by her who has been the wife of Uriah. This is Jesus's genealogy. And there are, in just that short snippet, there are some messed up folks in there. And so to all of us, you know, who have ever messed up once in a while, there's still hope that God can bring forth good and his righteousness out of the things that we have devastated and that we have been messed up in. But the enemy comes and he wants to come alongside you and cause you to move into captivity and then lock your own door by convincing you that you have failed God, that you have missed God, that your life is inconsequential, that nothing good could ever come from you. But if you will purpose in your heart to honor God, to bless his name, then his Spirit will come upon you, and his Spirit will break that yoke off of you, and his Spirit will break that identity off of you, and you'll begin to live again and draw and nurture and be nurtured by the streams of living waters that flow, and your roots will go down deep into the soil, and God will bring forth out of you his purposes. It says in verse 9 of Isaiah 11, it says, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. When else was that said? In Habakkuk 2. And then in the day of Pentecost, when the Spirit was poured out, your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your young men will dream dreams, and your old men will dream dreams because they are sleepy. If you ever get confused about that one, men dream. And the young men, they're full of vision, right? They're gonna see. And so, but the Spirit of the Lord shall cover the earth as the waters, the glory, the knowledge of the Lord, the knowledge of the glory of the Lord shall cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. Isn't it amazing what's happening over at Asbury College? Right? That without anybody kind of rising to the top and being the leader, it's just this thing that's just covering, it's just sweeping the nation. And how can you stop it when you don't know who's controlling it? And that to me sounds a lot like God. God in his sovereignty concealed his plan, what he was going to do with Jesus when he sent them to the earth from Satan. Satan kept on trying to figure it out and kept on trying to steal the blessing from him, get him to slip up in some way. And finally, when he had the opportunity to kill him, he just went ahead and took the challenge and just killed him. And he claimed victory. He's like, yeah, victory. And God showed up and said, hey, listen, I just wanted to remind you something. Everyone that has sinned shall die, but you have one in your custody right now that is sinless. I want him back. What do you mean that you want him back? He's dead. I know, but he died without sin. Well, what does that mean? That means you can't claim him. Well, I didn't understand that. That's not fair, God. He goes, I know. I hid it from you because I was fixing it for all eternity so that you couldn't stop me. And then Andy Mineo came, you can't stop me. That was for the young people, and they did not like it. Joe liked it. Thanks, Ann. When Jesus went walking through Jericho, there was a man that was born blind. His name was Bartimaeus. And when he heard that Jesus was walking by, he started shouting, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. He's appealing to a title that is over 1,000 years old, to a person who has a connection to that city because one of his distant relatives used to be a prostitute in that city. His great-great-grandmother, David's great-great-grandmother, was a prostitute in the city where the Messiah comes walking through. There was a shout that was lifted up in that place that brought the walls down. This man was shouting to bring down the scales off of his eyes. And so I wonder if we could also be so bold to say we can look back through our history and see the brokenness of where we have come from, but cry out and shout to the one who is walking through there right now that is able to bring healing to the condition that we have right now. In Luke chapter 13, is that where we were reading this morning? Jesus heals a woman who has been bent over double for 18 years, tormented by an evil spirit. 13 years. Oh, Luke 13. And he heals her on a Sabbath day. And they rebuke him for healing on the Sabbath. And Jesus says, is it good to do good or evil on the Sabbath? This is a daughter of Abraham, and she has been bound for so many years. Isn't it time for her to be set free? Isn't it time for you to be set free? Isn't it time that the enemy stop tormenting you with your past and you start saying yes to your future? Isn't it time that you start building your legacy? Isn't it time that you start declaring my blessings are on the way? Isn't it time that you come out of agreement with what the enemy has tried to identify you with? Because there is coming one who is going to judge not according to his eyes or to what he hears, but by the Spirit of the Lord. Here's what I want to say to you is that we live in a day and age where you judge by what brand of television you watch. What news channel you put on, I can tell you what type of person you may or may not be based on the channel that you are watching. Because of what you see, and because of what you hear. But there's coming one in the midst of it that comes in and says, I see everything that you are saying, and I hear everything that you are saying and doing, and none of that moves me because I'm going to bring truth. Boom, boom, boom. Boom. Get your eyes off of Hunter Biden's laptop. Get your eyes off of China and the sky and the air balloons, and deal with what is going on, what you have allowed to come into your own airspace. Get your own life right. You're never going to change anything by judging anybody else, but there's coming one who is full of the Spirit of the living God, who is able to set you free from the misery that causes you to say, well, let me see how miserable other people's lives are, so I feel better about my life. Let's start bringing good news. That's why I love that the college is starting to, the news stations begin to come and go like, well, what's going on there? We don't know. God's doing something new. What do you mean he's doing something new? You should come and see. There's a legacy that God is building in you. There's a destiny that God has buried in you, and the enemy wants to pull you as far away from that as he can. Isaiah 61. Isaiah 61. The Spirit of the sovereign Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach good tidings to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prisons to those who are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of the vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, to console those who mourn in Zion, to give them beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garments of praise for the spirit of heaviness, and that they may be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he may be glorified. Jesus quotes this passage, not the entire passage, but he quotes that in Luke chapter 4 when he comes back to his hometown, and he says, I am he, and if you're willing to believe me, this word is being fulfilled right now in your midst. What is he saying? Blind eyes are opening. There's healing for the brokenhearted. Their prison doors are being opened. He's comforting those who mourn and those who grieve in Zion. He's saying every bad thing that has happened to you, now God wants to turn around and use it for his glory. Will you allow him to use you? Will you allow him to use the tragedy that you have been through, the blows that you have taken? Will you allow him to show his strength, that you may be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord? Nowadays we have GPS, and we have our phones, and we have navigation systems that tell us how to get there. But you remember back in the day when you had to tell the person, now you go down this dirt road, when you get to the big oak tree, you hang a right. When you get to the mailbox, you hang a left. You go over the ditch, and then it's just a little, don't go to the right, but go to the left. There's a big hole right there. If you go to the right, you're going to end, remember when you used to give directions like that? Maybe it was just me when growing up in Argentina, that's how it was. And you had to pay attention. Then you would arrive, and there wasn't a ring on the door, on the thing that, connected you visually to the thing. And so you had to use your voice to announce, hey, I'm here. And they were screening their doorbell. They were screening their doorbell with the sound of voice to know whether, you were a salesperson or whether you were the friend that they were expecting. And so when you announced that you were here, then the door was open. And some of us need to announce to the Lord, we're here. And the door will open. And we come into what God has called us to be in. Because we are building a legacy, and we are building something that should stand. And so when others go to give direction, they can speak of your life and say, You remember Papa Jody and how he pressed us for the presence of the Lord and how he stood for it and what he stands for? What do you stand for? What will others point to you in future generations and say, I'm so glad that they were there because they held a place that we can point back to say, that's where it started for me. I was so lost until I saw that oak of righteousness that was standing there. I was so hopeless, but I remembered you talking about there is a place. I remember you talking about there is one who believed. I remember you talking about the faithfulness of God to bring me through. And when I saw that tree and when I saw that landmark and when I saw, then it caused me to turn. You are a living legacy that will be spoken of hundreds and thousands of years after you. Start acting like it. I'm buying the tape, the CD, everything. I'm going to listen to this myself. I needed this morning. I hope you needed it too. I felt very strongly from the Lord, and I'm closing with this. I was going to start with this, but just as I was preparing last night, I want to say this phrase: okay is not okay. Okay is not okay for you. Okay is passive. Okay is mediocre. Okay is middle of the road. Okay is not okay. You are meant to thrive. You are destined for greatness. The word of the Lord is in you. He has come to redeem you. You are the planting of the Lord. And you are the tree that is planted by the river of God. Right? And you do not sit with scoffers. And you do not sit with gossipers. Right? You sit in the presence of the Lord and you draw from him. And he says who you are. And I felt this very strongly. It may be for somebody here. It may be for somebody that's watching us online. But there's a song called Tell Your Heart to Beat Again. And most recently, I think Danny Goki was the one who sang it. I want to read to you the words. It says, you're shattered like you've never been before. The life you knew is in 1,000 pieces on the floor. And words fall short in times like these. When this world drives you to your knees, you think you're never going to get back to the one that you used to the you used to be. Tell your heart to beat again. Close your eyes and breathe it in. Let the shadows fall away. Step into the light of grace. Yesterday's a closing door. You don't live there anymore. Say goodbye to where you've been and tell your heart to beat again. I felt strongly from the Lord to let the shadows fall away, to step into the light of his grace. Yesterday's a closing door. You don't live there anymore. Rahab had to process that. Naomi had to process that. Ruth had to process that. David had to process that. All of them had tragedy that they could have stayed stuck in, but they did not allow their yesterday to define who they were going to be. Don't allow your yesterday to define who you're going to be. God is here to do something new. And I want to say to you right now, prophetically, let your heart beat again. There has been something that has arrested your emotions and that has caused you to shut down and to lock up and to let other people's out because you said, I'm not going to be hurt that way again. I'm not going to allow myself to be touched like that again or hurt like that again. I'm going to close myself off from the world. But the Lord says, I can't have you closed off like that and use you. I want to put in you, I want to remove from you the heart of stone, and I want to put in you a heart of flesh. I want to cause your heart to beat again. Let's stand to our feet. The song goes on to say, beginning, just let that word wash over you. It's all right now. Love's healing hands have pulled you through. So get back up. Take step one. Leave the darkness. Feel the sun. Cause your stories far from over. Because your story's far from over and your journey's just begun. Let every heartbreak and every scar be a picture that reminds you who has carried you thus far. Because love sees farther than you could ever. And in this moment, heaven's working everything for your good. Lord, I pray right now in this moment that you would redeem people's past. And right now, if you need to walk out of your past, I just want to encourage you to just come on up into these altars. We need a place where we can just let go of the identities that have stuck onto us. Rahab needed an opportunity to be able to walk out of mistakes or the person that she had become. And maybe you're living in that way because that's how life was, but you can't continue to live that way as you go forward. And Naomi had to walk out of some grief and some disappointment. And these are things that happen to us in life. You live long enough, somebody's going to die that's close to you. And it's heartbreaking and it causes you to shut down, but today you're saying, I can't live shut down anymore, and you want to come forward. I want to invite you into these altars. You need a place of where you can be bathed. Jesus said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. All authority in heaven. That means there is a place that we can go into. In heaven, and all authority on earth has been given to me. Now I am sending you. Go and make disciples of nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Baptize them. You need a place where you can immerse yourself and you can come out different. That's what baptism is. It's a place where you can immerse yourself and you can let the old things be washed away and the new things come to life. Lay the old man down. He said, I have all authority. Behold, I make all things new. I don't know what the identity is that you've been living in, but I know that you've got a legacy to live, and you've got an inheritance, and you've got a legacy to leave, and you've got to leave some of the things behind. And so today, maybe just as a prophetic act, you need to walk out of that, and you need to say, I need to be washed. I need to be consumed. I need to come to the house of the Lord where I feel something changes in my life and it doesn't come back on me ever again. I need to feel that this burden, this chain, this thing that I'm feeling, that it lifts off of me and I can be the person who God created me to be. So I'm going to invite the prayer team, if they would come forward. Prayer team, if you would be up here, and if you need prayer today, if you want God to rid you of those things that have defined who you were, you want to believe the planting of the Lord, I want to invite you to come forward as we worship right now. Come on. Come on, come forward as we worship.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh,